We're featuring our final program in the series on employment and disabilities. Last time we addressed mental health in the workplace, both people seeking employment and people who are already in employment in the workplace but have mental health disorders or conditions. Today we're going to talk about disabilities that occur as a result of employment, and we are going to talk specifically about post-traumatic stress disorder. We have a very special guest with us today. The Beverly Hills Supper Club fire took place on May 28th of 1977, but our guest told me that 41 years later, when I spoke with him a few weeks ago about being on this program, he woke up a night or two later thinking about the tragedy and the fire. So even 41 years later, he experiences post-traumatic stress disorder. Dick Riesenberg has lived with it that long, and he is here to help first responders and all of us better understand what the disorder can do and how they can seek out help for it. Too often survivors continue in silence without others knowing how they continue to be haunted by disturbing memories. We had on our show last time Noell Saunders, and she talked about the firefighters' walk from Burlington, Kentucky Fire. A little later in this show to speak with Dick and with all of us in terms of her insights about then and now. So we look forward to that. Welcome, Dick, and we thank you for being on our program.
Yeah, you're welcome.
In the next few minutes, I'm going to ask you to recap some of what took place on that infamous night. As I recall, or as I understand, the call came into the station around 9:01, and within 3 minutes, you and the Southgate Fire Department had made their way up that long, narrow driveway up to the Supper Club. And from what I understand, as chief, your priority one upon arriving on the scene was to assess the situation.
Of course.
So, going to ask you to do that. Going to ask you to tell us.
Well, yeah, we've had over the years many of our calls to Beverly Hills, and Southgate's a small town. Beverly Hills was our biggest scare, even though we did have 2 schools and 2 churches, a couple of gas stations. Beverly Hills was a big building and held a lot of people. When we got the call on our home fire monitors, I, like everybody else in the fire department, think, well, here we go. There's a bulb out in the parapet outside, caught a fire. Somebody's automobile in the parking lot smoking, whatever, maybe a grass fire. Not so the case. We got on 27, the US 27, and we were able to see the building, north, east, west, and south. I mean, everywhere. And I thought, oh my goodness, we got the big one. And I immediately called Newport Fire Department and Fort Thomas Fire Department to move up to our fire. So immediately it became a 3-alarm fire, and which they did. They showed up. We made it up there. Southgate made it up there in 3 minutes. I went to Beverly Hills is not that far away from our fire station, and we got there within 3 minutes.
You're rather remarkable even today.
Yeah, it was really, but now that doesn't mean we were set up and ready to go. That just means we arrived.
Right.
You know, in a little rescue unit and an ambulance. Fort Thomas, I believe, had 3 trucks and an ambulance, so we were pretty well staffed, I thought. Not so again. When it was all said and done, we had 22 fire trucks on scene, 24 ambulances, and some of them were from Hamilton County in Cincinnati, in Ohio, and it still wasn't enough. And the only hospital close by was, at that time, St. Luke. It's St. Elizabeth now, but St. Luke, and they informed us they can't handle any more people. So now what do we do? Well, people went to St. E's in Covington, out in Boone County, sent some people to Cincinnati, and that's all well and good, except it's a long ride, and we were without that particular ambulance for a long time.
Let me back you up a little bit, because want to learn more about the injuries and unfortunately the people who deceased. But you went into the building.
Yeah.
And can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I saw no fire anywhere. I looked around, no fire. And I did have several of our fellows and a truck over on the kitchen side. In the front, of course, we had that. And I had to find fire. And we didn't have a whole lot of people there at the moment. We had other fire departments on the way. And I went inside, broke a firefighter rule. I went inside by myself. That's a no-no. No line, no protection, none whatsoever. And I went in for the simple fact that I wanted to find where the fire was. I did not find the fire when I went in there. If you would get in, if you're not familiar with Beverly, I got all the way back to the oval bar. I'm going to guess 50 feet from the front door, and still no fire. But the smoke intensified terribly, and I was starting to choke and what have you, and I knew I had to get out or I'm dead. So our training is get down on your hands and knees. Supposedly there's more oxygen at floor level, and that's what I did. I got down to and it was an oval bar, and I had my hand on it and trying to milk my way around. And what I did, now I know, but then I didn't, I got further and further away. I was behind that oval bar, and I put my brain in overdrive, and I could feel the top of the bar. I knew what a bar was. And I looked straight ahead, and I saw red lights from the truck, which would save my life. I got down on my hands and knees. I reversed my direction and crawled on hands and knees toward those red lights. Sure enough, and I found the steps. Unfortunately, I rolled down the steps. I just lost my balance. But in the meantime, when I was at the bar, some patrons had already made it to where I wound up at the front entrance. They too fell down the steps. So I helped them out, some of them, and a couple of Fort Thomas firefighters were at the doorway, and I got out, and they said, "You get some oxygen with you, Chief. And we'll
you
take
didn't have
from
oxygen
here."
with you?
No,
wow.
Nothing. Had nothing. And I did that. They took over and got those people out. How many were there? 20, 25 maybe, no more than that. And they got those people out, mostly older folks. Nobody was killed there. A couple of bruises and a couple of bumps. No serious cuts, no broken bones. Good so far, right? When I got a whiff of oxygen or two, sitting on one of our trucks, one of my lieutenants came running from the back. He said, "Chief, we got a real problem in the back. There's people dead back there. They're laying dead inside. We got to get help back there." So I got on the radio, the fire radio, that everybody could hear with their trucks and everything. And I said, if you're on a hose line, drop the hose now and go to the cabaret room exit. That was where they were talking about. And there are people dying. We have to rescue people inside. And everybody that was there at that time ran in that direction. And one guy said to me, "What are you going to do about this fire?" And I said, "I'm getting to that. Don't worry about it." So we had people coming behind, for Highland Heights, Cold Spring, Alexander, a lot of other fire departments, Wilder, a lot of other fire departments were, and as soon as they arrived, they picked up the hose lines, and by then they were hooked to water. So not much time was wasted there, not much. And we got a pretty good, I didn't do it because I was out front, but my lieutenants and captains that were back in the cabaret room, they did a pretty good job of setting up rescue recovery. And I was told when I did go back, I was told that many people were already dead when we arrived. But what happened was a big pile of people, if you can imagine, at the doorway. And the ones on the bottom, believe it or not, were alive. And the guys pulled out the dead people. And I'm getting ahead of my story. At Beverly Hills that night was a convention of doctors having some kind of an awards banquet party.
I read that.
And thank God, there might have been 50, 60 doctors there, and they set up a triage at the chapel and turned that into the emergency room. And without them, more than 165 people would have died, I can tell you that.
Let me ask you, as you were just recounting what you've told me so far, even now, and I know you've recounted that story many times, what are you feeling? What are you feeling? What did you feel then at that point in the fire? What were you? How much were you aware of the historic proportions of this event?
I don't think I was aware of anything at that moment.
It was all instinctive.
Yeah, right. It was, training came into play.
Okay.
People first, fire second.
Because it was remarkable, these other departments showing up on the scene. The road, the driveway leading up to Beverly Hills is a single lane driveway lined with patrons trying to get out. And
well, yeah, let me
continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me recount that now. We needed that lane open for the ambulances. That I knew. And I got the state police who had showed up. I got the state police to help me with that. I said, get these people off the road. Do not let anybody but firefighters on that road, because we're going to use it for ambulances. And he said, I've got a lot of police cars coming up. I said, get them out. They're going to have to park in there's a great big area in front of Beverly Hills down on Pike 27, Highway 27. I said, everybody had to park down there, which they did. The police did that, and they kept the people who wanted their cars to go home. I wouldn't let them have that either. And it got so bad that one guy grabbed me, wanted to punch me, and for not letting him get his car and go home.
Yeah.
And I tried to explain to him, you're not going to get it, and nobody else is either. Well, the state police came up, and the man in charge got me a bodyguard for the rest of the night. I couldn't even go to the bathroom without the guy coming along with me. And it sounds funny, but that's the truth. I had to do everything with that guy, and I'm grateful that he did help me. But I never had a problem with the patrons after that. There's something magical about a state policeman in that uniform.
But you had all of this going on. You had loss of life, you had loss of property, you had other officials and responders showing up on the scene to coordinate.
Yeah.
Eventually, and we'll get to it, I mean, other things as well. I don't want to preempt what you've got to tell. But you've got quite an event going on.
You better believe it. And I had a lot of help. I had senior officers from Fort Thomas, Newport, Wilder, and a few other departments, and I knew those people, chiefs, assistant chiefs, high-ranking people, knew what they were doing, knew the things I was facing. And what I did, I set up 4 areas of operation. The front door, area 1. Over on the kitchen side, area 2. On the Alexandria Pike side, area 3. In the cabaret room in the back, area 4. And that's what we went by all night long on the radio. Areas 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I had a senior officer in charge of each one. We all had radios, we all had connection to one another. And I had a very good friend. He was an assistant chief in Southgate, one of my very good friends. And I appointed him my aide. It sounds like a war zone, and that's about what it was, it felt like. And he was my aide the whole evening. He helped me with the press, getting the press off my back.
Yeah, I wanted to close with this first segment with. You even had the media. Now, you got the call about the fire at 9:01. The media wants to go on the air at 11.
Yeah, they did go on the air at 11.
And they want news about
Yeah, I put my aide, that I told you about, in charge of the fire. And I said, Jack, if you got anything that you don't want to handle or can't handle, just come down and get me or call me on the radio. I'll come back up. But I'll probably be with this media for 10, 12 minutes. It wound up being 15 minutes that I was with them. And finally I said, hey, I got to get back. I got it back. And I did. They let me go. Didn't let me go. I just went. And I told them, I promised them I would come back later on with some fresh news. And I did that too. But I knew I couldn't handle this whole thing myself. That's the reason. I think I really did a good thing by separating the areas and then putting people that know what they're doing in charge of that. And my aide, he was just fabulous to me. I don't know what I would have done without him, really. He too suffered from PTSD. He died in the year 2000. A very good friend of mine. I hated to go to his funeral, but it happened. Quite a few guys died, but he was one of the worst for me. I miss him dearly. And in your opening statements, you said that it's been 41 and a half years, and I think about it occasionally. I have news for everybody. I think about it every day of my life. Not a day goes by, no matter where I'm at. Beverly Hills crosses my mind. And why is that? Well, 165 people died, and the good Lord put me in charge of that fire. So I feel they died on my watch. Mm-hmm. I wish we could have got them out, believe me. I think we, as a fire team, did a tremendous job of not getting the count more than 165. The fire marshal of Kentucky, later on, it took forever, but offered a Medal of Valor to the Southgate Fire Department, and we extended that to other people that did a yeoman's job there, and everybody got one of these Medal of Valors. And just looking at it, I can tell you, I see a lot of faces in that little pin. I see a lot of faces in there, and some of them are dead. The patrons are dead. And I'm listening to people throughout the night that were still there. A woman came to me and grabbed me and wanted to know where her husband was. Now we're talking about 3,000 or 4,000 people there. She said, he's got brown shoes on, a blue striped suit. And under my breath, I said, I thought, you have just told me what he's got on. Every man here's got the same thing on, pinstripe suit. An
emotional time. Yes. Then.
Yeah.
And now I can tell even now.
I didn't have the guts, Mike, to tell her if he's not here. And she said, first of all, that she looked around and couldn't find him anywhere where there were people. She went down the hill and looked in that group of people, nothing. And I was thinking to myself, if she didn't find him here, and he's not up, when we called up at the morgue to see if he had identification on him, nothing up there, and I didn't have the courage to tell her, he's probably one in that pile of dead people over there.
Let's pause and process some of what you've already shared, because it's so much. Yeah. Let's take a moment and break and come back.
All right. That's fine. We can do that.
Welcome back to our second segment with our guest, Dick Riesenberg, who was the chief at the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire in 1977 and has since struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder, like so many first responders, but understandably with an epic event like that, the memories don't go away quickly. As he was sharing in the first segment, there's not a day that doesn't go by that he doesn't think about the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire, at which 165 people perished. The last one the next year in March, and there were more than 200 people injured at the night of the fire. And other numbers, it was the third deadliest nightclub fire in U.S. history,
Right.
the ninth worst fire in U.S. history. It was the deadliest fire since 1944.
Yep.
The well-known Hartford Circus fire in Hartford, Connecticut, where 168 people perished. And when we think about the fire and how did all of this happen, Beverly Hills had burned down once before in the 1930s and had been rebuilt, remodeled as recently as 1971.
And another fire.
Yeah, and had its problems. Is I'm going to get into it. Chief, I went online, and estimates of the crowd that night in the whole complex were about 3,000, and you said maybe 4,000?
Close to it.
Yeah, and as I'll share, the facility wasn't built for that, or wasn't built to accommodate those kinds of numbers. There was a private awards banquet that maybe you alluded to earlier that a number of doctors had been at.
That's right.
That broke up about 8:30, and the people in that room were already complaining about how warm it felt. There were not yet any signs of fire or smoke, but there was a great deal of overcrowding in that room. And closer to 9 o'clock, about maybe 5 minutes until 9, Beverly Hills staff re-entered the room, and they spotted smoke up around the ceiling. And within 3 or 4 minutes, they notified the fire department, but they tried to douse the fire with fire extinguishers unsuccessfully. And the reason why, there had been a wedding reception in the Zebra Room, and that's where so many people reported a lot of overheating, not yet any smoke, but within 30 minutes, it was pretty well beginning to spread. And you alluded to one of the entranceways, folks kind of being piled up.
At the front.
Yeah, Bruce Rath, Fort Thomas firefighter, made the same report that folks were stacked up.
Well, Bruce was, he's talking about the cabaret room.
Okay.
He worked in that cabaret room. And we had a lot of Southgate Fire Department people work in the cabaret room because that was the first place that we were aware of.
And that was the big room. That was where
that
John Davidson was
right.
scheduled to appear.
That's correct. It held a lot of people.
It was capacity was 650, but estimates were maybe between 9 and 1,300.
Yeah, that's correct, but I don't know about that 650 figure.
That's that's what's one of the online sites said, that it was maximum capacity was 650, vastly exceeded.
Oh yeah. I think that's more than, I think the capacity was allowed more than 650. But
Okay.
It was a huge room, and believe me, it was. But it was overcrowded that night. There's no doubt about that.
As I understand it, all the rooms had chairs set up in aisleways and
That I don't know. That part I don't know. Some of that stuff was being held quiet.
right.
And
we're not here to point fingers. or anything.
no, me either. Me either.
But the records did say that there were 16 and a half exits with the Beverly Hills Club, and the state law mandated there should have been 27 and a half.
Sure.
And I mean, I'm just reporting there was no sprinkler system.
No sprinkler system.
There was no audible fire alarm that would warn guests and inhabitants that there was a fire on the premises or in the building specifically.
It was a funny, it's not funny thing, but a strange thing that occurred. You alluded to the fact that there was a fire there in 1971. That's true. Schillings owned that place. I think they owned it at that time. At any rate, that fire started. Our chief of Southgate was out of town on business at that time, And I was a third in charge. I was a battalion chief at the time of that fire, and the assistant chief was there, and it was his fire. So he and I was kind of his aide.
Right.
We got that fire out, and when all the smoke settled, so to speak, and they wanted to rebuild, they discovered, with like politicians do sometimes, and people that build things, discovered that they could do this in a couple of months maybe, but it wasn't completely burnt to the ground.
Okay.
So therefore, it was not a complete loss, and they considered that remodeling. That's why there was no sprinkler system, because they didn't have to abide by the new rule.
No sprinkler system, no firewalls, and I'm just going to contribute this
Yep.
that I read, that at that time, the fire department was not required to, or was not authorized to enforce codes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're unlike today, where fire marshal or whoever will
Yeah.
come around.
Excuse me.
That was
yeah.
not the case.
I know that, but that's one of the. And I was told that by the Schilling family, that they didn't have to put sprinklers in because, and I just mentioned that it was remodeling going on, not new building, a new building.
Chief, do those kinds of things haunt you somewhat?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. But I tell people, I'll tell you the same thing. I tell people, I tell the press all the time, that wasn't my job. My job was to put the fire out. Other people were in charge of that kind of stuff, and not me, not my firefighters. And that sounds like I'm trying to weasel out of it.
No, not at all.
And I'm not, because we did our job. We did our job best we could.
Welcome back to What People with Disabilities Teach Us. We've been joined by Noell Saunders, who previously was on the show, our last program, and she is here with us representing current efforts in Northern Kentucky to advocate for firefighters with post-traumatic stress disorder. And we've already gone over this, but I'm going to go over it with you again, is a checklist of what constitutes post-traumatic stress disorder, what symptoms to watch for, and this didn't exist in 1977.
No.
I got this off of WebMD's current website, and I'm going to go over the list again. Number one, after the fire, did you experience physical pain?
No.
But number two, nightmares or flashbacks?
Yes. Still.
Still, 41 years later. Depression or anxiety? Yes.
Cost me my first marriage.
Number four, withdrawal.
Yeah, to a degree.
To a degree. And I've been around you enough now to know you're an outgoing social person. So that was out of character. Avoidance.
Yes and no.
People, places, situations, did you? Yes and no?
Yeah. I'm going to say yes and no.
Yeah, and feel free to chime in any examples of any of these.
Okay.
Or to say for a while, or still. Repression. Did you just try to bury anything?
And get away from it. Tried to many times get away from it. I couldn't do it.
Or
Still
deny
can't.
it, you know?
Yeah, can't do it. Can't do it. It is my life now.
Did you
It has been.
Did you experience emotional numbing?
Yes, I did.
So if a child was born or somebody died, you didn't quite have the strength of feelings that you once had.
Yeah, I guess I could inject this too. When I go to a funeral, especially if it's a firefighter friend, go to a funeral, first thing I think of the whole time I'm there is the Beverly Hills fire. You know, there lies a guy that helped me fight that fire, you know. And I'm still alive.
Hyperarousal, and by that I mean everybody gets excited, but gets excited and stays that way.
No, I wouldn't say I get excitable.
Okay. Irritability.
Yeah. Again, irritability in my first marriage.
Sure.
I had trouble with that.
And let me back up, and then we'll finish the list. You were never diagnosed with any kind of disorder prior to the fire.
No.
No one ever concluded, well, you're a depressed person.
No.
Or suffer from anxiety.
No, probably the opposite of that.
So it's been since the event.
Yeah.
Guilt and shame.
No guilt, or shame either. It's, I think, I mean, this sounds like I'm bragging, and I'm not, but I think we as a fire department did better than anybody could expect, really. I watched guys risk their life that night, and all night long. I watched that. When I have to send a crew in on a line, we tried to put 3 people on a line, sometimes 4. But we had enough people to do 4. Send them in there. I'm thinking, I may not see these guys again. They might not come out. That's a hard thing to accept, because we had 522 firefighters there, but not all at the same time. I have to always inject that. They came and left on an as-needed basis. But out of the 522 of them, I knew personally probably half of them. You know, and that's a lot of guys I was sending in there to maybe die. Firefighters do that.
A lot of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
More than perhaps many of us can imagine.
Mm-hmm. I did a couple of fire drills for different, after the fire. I was a drill instructor in Southgate prior to the fire for about 8 years.
Yeah.
So I wasn't a rookie at it. And after the fire was over, and a couple of fire departments asked me if I would do a drill and teach the youth what it's like. And you can't explain it to someone young.
Right.
It just doesn't happen.
Just maybe 4 or 5 more behavior changes.
Behavioral changes. Yeah, well, yeah, a little bit.
Mood swings.
Mood swings all the time, still.
Still, even today.
Mm-hmm.
Hypervigilant.
Yeah.
Always guarded.
Yeah, guard what I say, guard what people say to me.
And I know from experience that you like to face the entrance, exit, the doorways. You like to see what's coming and what's going.
That's right. That's right.
Easily startled.
Easy to get startled? Yeah, sometimes I am. My present wife and I have problems with that. And here's how we fix it. I said, don't talk to me that way about this. You weren't there. And she wasn't. We weren't together at the fire. Didn't even know her. And then if I go too far with that, she said, oh, you go to hell. And walks away from me. And you know what? That's a good way to settle it. We don't get in a big argument. She goes north, I go south, and then in the house.
Last one. Symptoms lasting longer than 3 months.
Oh, yeah. It's lasted 41 and a half years.
Most of these symptoms.
Yeah. Now, 41 and a half years ago, PTSD wasn't on the map yet.
Right. Professionals didn't have a list like I just read.
What they called it back then was a nervous breakdown.
I was going to say, or a meltdown, breakdown, or in the military, battle fatigue. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this can happen. We need to share for the audience. This can happen not only to the military and first responders, but to storm victims, assault victims, crime victims.
Anybody.
Yeah.
Nobody's exempt. And another big one that you didn't mention is addiction.
We're going to, aren't we, Dick?
Yeah.
Addiction is huge in trying to mask the symptoms of PTSD.
In fact, as you've alluded to multiple times, within a couple of months, you went through an end of your marriage, or?
Yeah. The fire was in May. We got filed for divorce in October. It was just a few months later.
And how frequently were you drinking heavily?
From that point on, heavily. When I was younger, I drank beer. It's distasteful to me today. I do drink. I like highballs and stuff and wine, but beer, I can't stand it anymore. But I drank a ton of it in those days. I was much younger, and I became a drunk for about 3 years. Quit going to church. Threw God out of my life, so to speak, and 3 years. And it was hard to come back. It really was hard to come back, but I did.
You got a couple of reprimands, one job terminated and another threatened.
Yeah, I was a volunteer firefighter, so I had a job at the Cincinnati Gas and Electric Company in those days. It was called Duke Energy now. But my boss pulled me in one day. He said, I think what you went through, Dick, and it's terrible. I feel sorry for you. But we can't put up with this crap anymore. You're going to have to straighten up or you're going to ship out.
Told you if you came in hungover one more time?
Yeah, and quit doing give up on the job and go down the street and get a beer or whatever, A lot of that was done in those days, not just by me, but by other people. That it's unheard of today. They catch you doing that today, they fire you on the spot.
Lost contact with your children even?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Not total loss, but I did. And it still shows a little bit today. It does. Not much and not bad. I mean, they come around at Christmas time. They come around on birthdays, theirs and mine, and my new wife, their stepmom will say, we have our time, we have our moments, and they're mostly all good. One stinker in the crowd is my youngest son. He and his wife moved to Florida, so I don't get to see him much. We talk a lot on Facebook or telephones, but I haven't seen him in well over a year now, and he's been down there, 5 years, I guess. So.
Noelle, we brought you in here for a reason. How's
Yeah.
all this sounding to you?
It sounds familiar with a lot of stories of a lot of firefighters.
Yeah.
So this is alive
No.
and kicking.
Yes, it is. It's not being able to get away from the traumas that they face on a daily basis on every call.
And so we hear in the news, in the media, about fires and about crime scenes and so forth and so on, but we don't hear about what Dick is describing now.
No, they're really hush-hush with it. Firefighters are. They don't want to take a chance of embarrassing their fire department, what they feel is an embarrassment, but it's not. And they don't want to share because they're scared of retaliation or their brother's not thinking they can handle doing the job, or even loss of job. It's such a taboo thing to talk about, and it shouldn't be.
Or maybe even what's going on in the family.
Yeah, absolutely. They tend to take it out on their families.
Yeah, that's what I'm
On their
saying,
wives,
and they don't want others to know that.
No, they don't. They want to keep it really close, really quiet, really personal.
Yeah.
And it's sad because departments are evolving and there's help now, but they're still keeping it really quiet.
So what Dick is doing right now doesn't happen
No,
very often.
not very often at all. It takes a really strong individual.
I mean, eventually you did get it turned around, Dick. I mean, you.
Yeah, it was about 2.5 years after the fire that I got so bad that my brother got me in St. Elizabeth's drug and alcohol recovery center, or whatever they want to call it. And I was there for 33 days under scrutiny of a psychiatrist and a psychologist, and every day, and The bad thing of that was, and I was not used to that, and I could never get used to it, and still can't to this day. At night, you had your own cubicle. There's a bathroom in there, and a shower, a bed, and a vanity. That's it, and a window with screen on it, and bars, and they lock your door.
Sounds a little bit like a cell.
You got it.
And
And they
incarceration.
called those rooms cells, too, in those days. Not a good thing to do.
No,
Not a good thing to do.
not very therapeutic.
Well, they had a amateur comedian come one night when I was there, and I'm not going to mention his name. I don't know if he's still alive, but he was semi-funny, you know what I mean, and on and on and on for an hour or so. When it was over, the head nurse said, "Is there anybody here? You all love the show. Is there anybody here want to say anything about it?" I raised my hand. She said, "Yeah, Mr. Riesenberg." What? I said, "Do you mean to tell me that you're going to put all of us in those cells and lock the door, and you're going to let that SOB go home?" Well, the leader of the hospital came to see me the next day and bawled me silly, bawled me out, which is a bad thing to do, I thought. But
Absolutely. And eventually you took a year off. The doctor advised you
Yes.
to take
Yeah.
a year off from work and with
well, it wasn't quite a year, but I did get some time off. Said, take a trip. I was single then. Take a trip, do whatever you want to do legally, you know, fish, hunt, play golf, whatever. Don't go to any fire department. That's the rule I broke. Everywhere I went, I visited the
blood.
local fire department.
Well, mostly what happens, most firemen work 24 on, 48 off. So, and then sometimes they're held over. So they only get to see their therapist, you know, here and there if they attend one. So what is happening is they're not getting away from the traumas enough. They're not getting some downtime to process what they've been through, to work with the therapist, to get that time off because they got to be back on shift right away. So that's making it kind of difficult.
And that, you know, to Dick's credit, that was part of his recovery and healing, is that, and we advocate this, he remained connected not just with firefighters, but all throughout his life. He eventually made it back to church. You remarried. You got reconnected with your children. You were a guy that knew people in the community, and you resumed that in time. And we say on this program that is the strongest medicine of all.
Absolutely.
But the problem is, too many people, as you've alluded to, isolate themselves, withdraw, and don't find
No.
friendships.
And then they're still experiencing those traumas every third day. And they're not only processing the old traumas, they're experiencing new traumas as well.
And there was no, understandably, to comment on the times, I doubt seriously that you went through any training to prepare. How could anyone imagine, how would you prepare someone for something like the Beverly Hills Supper Club? I remember learning about returning veterans from Vietnam who were ordered into battle by their commanders, who promised support and we've got your back.
Yeah, we didn't.
But didn't. And how deeply that if they survived combat, they resented those broken promises and that lack of support. Who had your back?
I think every firefighter that I know has had my back and has my back wherever I go and meet them. So, hi, Chief, how you doing? How you feeling? You know, that kind of stuff. Guys come up to me and say, hi, Chief, how are you? I don't know who the heck they are, you know. But, you know, I get my picture taken a lot, and they're used to at any rate, and get around, and they know who I am.
Let me
See
ask,
my name, and they know who I am.
just by contrast, it's okay to get an alternative. I think you have a different report. If I were to ask you who has the back of some of the first responders who suffer from PTSD, what would be what would you say?
I would say probably their wives. would be the ones that have their backs the most, and their brothers.
When they go home and the doors are closed?
When they go home and the door's shut. Very few fire departments are talking about it, implementing debriefings, implementing it's okay to share.
Much less awareness in the community, your
Absolutely,
neighbors,
absolutely.
and
Absolutely. You think they're heroes and that nothing bothers them, and that's so far from the truth.
You see a lot of bad things as a firefighter. I was not in the military, and I know guys that were on battlefield and go back to Korea. I was in high school. I didn't have to go there, but Vietnam, and now this Afghanistan thing. But I'll never forget when Southgate, my department, got involved in life squad work and bought our first ambulance. We had 3-man crews, and it was my turn, and I went, and a guy pulled a tractor and trailer out of a side street, and this other guy going 45, 50 miles an hour went right into it, and it was a convertible, and the whole top of the car came off, you know. Well, when we got there, we had to get his body out. He was dead. He had no head. The head was in the back seat. I'll tell you what, that affected me deeply, deeply. That was long before the Beverly Hills fire. And I thought, oh my God, what this is? I don't know if I can handle this. It never happened again in my territory. Happens all the time. Firefighters deal with that kind of stuff all the time. And I give them all the credit in the world, because I have seen it, I have done it on a smaller basis and know what it is. It's horrifying, horrifying. And it's hard to have a drill and tell these youngsters, 20 and 21 and 22 years old, what they're going to see one of these days, what's going to happen to them. Get lost in a fire building, how you going to get out, all kinds of stuff. And they just sit there and just listen, smile, and somebody's telling a joke, and I think, you just don't get it, boys. You just don't get it.
According to a study, at least 103 firefighters and 140 police officers committed suicide in 2017.
Yes, sir.
While 93 firefighters and 129 police officers died in the line of duty. More committed suicide than died in the line of duty in 2017.
Yes, sir.
It's also estimated that only 40% of firefighter suicides are reported, making it possible that more than twice as many firefighters take their own life than lose it on the job.
Yes, sir.
That's pretty staggering and astounding, and I'm sure Northern Kentucky's not aware.
Actually, for a long time there, Northern Kentucky led in the statistic of firefighter suicide.
We are glad that you're not one of those statistics, Dick.
Yeah, me too.
In fact, I said at one point, just how much did the fire increase your awareness? And I said, you know, after some people go through such a traumatic event, they're much more aware of the sun coming up in the morning and their surroundings, and you just become more sensitive to so many things in life. And you said you were.
Yeah, well, in my case, when my wife Carol and I go on vacation, if we stay at a hotel, I won't stay in a large hotel from the 9th, 10th floor up. Aerials can get you.
Yeah.
Up to that point. They can't get you after that point. We go to dinner, I don't care where it is, locally or somewhere else. We get a table near a door or a window, because I know what they did not do at Beverly is the people in the I think it was what the room was it, the crystal room, I think they called it, in the back, had those windows that were this yay off the floor to the ceiling. And they were standing in a line, breathing in that acrid smoke to get in the hallway to get. Throw a chair through the window, folks. and get out because the yard was right out there. Nobody threw a chair through a window. That's not my thing. That's common sense. But sometimes in panic, you don't have common sense. And they did not do that. But most of those people, I don't think any of them died from that room. But still, they got injured mentally, and they got injured from the smoke. So, and then when we have a party at our house or anybody's house, everybody, well, not everybody, some people still smoke, believe it or not. And I make sure I look around at those ashtrays and I put them cigarettes out, make sure they're out if there's a little bit of smoke coming out. Because we had a fire one time where the lady said she had to go to work at 8 o'clock, had to be there at 8 o'clock, and her and her husband both smoked. And she emptied all the ashtrays in the little plastic container underneath the sink, their trash container. We got the fire alarm at midnight. They had 4 hours to fester. And it did a lot of damage, killed their dog.
I'm sure it did. My goodness.
So, I mean, things like that affect my life.
But with regard to awareness, you became increasingly aware of relationships. You went back to church.
Yeah. Came back. Woke up one night, and a lot of people don't want to believe this. It is true. The Lord spoke to me. He said, "Come back to me. What are you waiting for?" All kinds of things. And I did. And I went back.
And your ex-wife said, "Come around and see the kids."
Yeah, yeah.
And you did.
And I did. And I did. She died in 2012. And now the kids are all mine. But they're all married and doing their own thing.
But you were aware, like never before, of how important that was.
Yeah, yeah. All came back to me. You always hear parents say, "Boy, if I'd have knew it was going to be like this, I'd have never had any kids." You know, that's all bunk. You love your kids to pieces. Everybody does. Everybody does.
And I even suggested to you what aided your recovery. And I said, "Dick, I haven't heard you talk about your parents."
My parents. Well,
How did they help you overcome the upbringing you received, the nurture from your mom and dad, the lessons they taught?
yeah.
How'd they help you rebound?
Well, it did. My mother was a very, very religious person. She really was. And my father, he was pretty religious too, but he was a stickler for being on time and don't miss work. Don't miss work. And that's the way he was brought up. He came from a family of 7 boys and 7 girls. And they were all raised the same way. And I'd never forget it. I was a teenager. He said, if the thermometer, you used to put it in your mouth in those days, remember them thermometers?
Sure.
Said, it's supposed to be 98.6. Pardon me, 98.6. If it's over 100, like 101 maybe, you don't have to go to school. But it has to go to 103 before you miss church.
Wow.
And that's what he said. Never forgot that. I never pulled that on my kids, nor will I.
But those lessons were pretty important to you.
Yes, they still are. They
still
still
are.
are. And my father was nothing. He was special to me and my brother, but nothing special to the world. Just a regular guy, you know, worked hard. He was the most generous man I ever met. The most generous man I ever met. And he taught that to me.
Noelle, are relationships important to people?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you love when you go through such trying times as a family. You learn to get up and, you know, embrace each day as a new day. Love hard. Tell people what they mean to you. Go positive.
And yet people suffering from PTSD, they're not the easiest people in the world.
No, sir. No, sir.
But it does make a difference.
It does make a difference.
Okay.
Because they're going to lash out at the ones they love the most. And the ones that love the most need to support them the most because that's who they trust.
Not necessarily to be abused.
No, absolutely not.
But to get help,
Yes, sir.
to get help.
Mm-hmm.
And Dick, go
My
ahead.
current wife has the elixir of all medicines to cure all ills, a hug.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. Well, you know Carol from the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She says that you wouldn't make it without her.
You're probably right.
I'm going to close in this 42nd year since the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire. Chief Dick Riesenberg, we express appreciation for your courageous leadership and for the suffering you've persevered and sometimes overcome. In all this, we don't forget the hundreds and thousands of first responders who have answered the call for thousands of emergencies, hundreds of thousands. We don't forget the victims of the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire, nor their survivors. And long after the burning embers have been extinguished and human life has been rescued or recovered, memories can burn for lifetimes. Be they difficult memories or sustaining memories,
Yeah.
the loving memories that keep us going.
Absolutely.
And a hug.
And a hug. Thank you for your Medal of Valor that you received.
Yeah.
Well deserved. But even more, thank you for your courage and honesty today. Your message and your life continue, and do so for the benefit of many others.
Thank you, Mike. I will say one thing before we close, that this is just the pin of the medal. I have a big medal that I wear on my Class A uniform. And when I was given that medal in front of 300 people, I think were there that night, mostly firefighters, I didn't accept it for myself. I accepted it on behalf of 522 firefighters that helped me at the Beverly Hills fire. I said, that is their medal. I will wear it with distinction and never forgetting those 522. It's their medal too.
We'll remember that. Thanks to both of you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Join us next time on What People with Disabilities Teach Us, when we will have another guest, another program. Thank you for being with us throughout this series on employment and disabilities. I thank my guests and thank all of you for joining us and tuning in.